Welcome to the Kairos Wisdom Keepers podcast, where ancient wisdom meets the modern healer. In our podcast, we share how ancestral soul wisdom and cyclical living support today's healers in activating greater wealth, health, intuition, and spiritual connection.
Welcome to our 14th episode of the Kairos Wisdom Keepers, the Fall Equinox and Mabon Rituals. I'm Janet Raftis.
And I'm Ina Lukas, and today we're going to talk about the significance of the fall equinox and Mabon cycle, along with rituals and ways to celebrate it.
Yeah, this is such an amazing time of year. It is the fall equinox, similarly to the spring equinox, is a day in which the light is exactly balanced. And it really marks, from this balancing point, it really marks our slow descent into the winter time. I say slow, but it can start to feel like it's very rapid at this time, which brings up a lot that we'll talk about. But the word equinox itself actually means equal night. And so here we are at this day in which we are harmonized and you are really tuned into the fact that you have the exact amount of hours of sun as you do moon, essentially. And so now we're entering into like the heavy moon time of our wheel of the year.
Yeah. So the equinox, entering into this balancing of darkness and light, feeling that energy of balance. And we want to also bring this in here because this year in particular, we're going into an eclipse season. So it's an important time to bring your awareness to balance and harmony. And it is the halfway point between the summer solstice and the winter solstice. And the dates vary a bit each year, but this year it lands on September 22nd. And the fall equinox has been celebrated for thousands of years by cultures around the world. And there are even ancient monuments that were built to capture this exact moment of balance, such as Chichen Itza in Mexico, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, even Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. There's the Sphinx and the pyramids of Giza and Palenque in Mexico. So there are all these different cultures that created monuments specifically designed to capture this moment of time of the balancing of day and night.
Yeah, I love that. It's just been so revered as such a special time, as both equinoxes and both solstices have been by our ancient people who really understood the essence of light and all that meant for them, right? For their physical bodies, for their crops, for everything that sustained them. So this is really the time of the second harvest. We had the first harvest with Lammas. We'll have the last harvest with Samhain. So here we are, though. This is the last of the bulk of the harvest, right? Like the harvest is definitely winding down here. We are having that acceleration of the shortening of the days. And so this has been historically a really bountiful celebration. We're going to talk a little bit about gratitude with that here too. It is this time of the year when people really celebrated all that they had reaped, right? Everything that they put in motion around the spring equinox when they were in the planting season. It's now pretty much for the most part come to fruition. So this is a time when you really want to honor that aspect of the harvest. It's also a time of this massive shifting in the light, right? So we hit that exact balance on the fall equinox, but then we start to shift into significantly less daylight hours, and we're becoming more attuned to the moon during this time. This shifting of light is going to impact you on a hormonal level. Light, we've talked about this in our earlier episodes, light actually affects our endocrine system and all of our internal workings on a very biological level. And so there can be during this time the internal knowing is happening that we're moving into more darkness, right? We have now left the extroverted part of the year and we're moving into the introverted part, the part that is more receptive, the part that is quieter, the part that is more reflective. And this can really start to trigger, especially as we see this um, in the external world as well, right? As the leaves start to change colors, it can really trigger feelings of grief and the knowledge that all things come to an end, right? And this can take you into a state of, of sadness. And a lot of people really suffer from seasonal depression disorder. And that is something that can be, I guess, triggered by this time of the year. And we believe that while this is a very real thing, that if you consciously work with the cycles, you can really mitigate some of that, because there is something here when you're really attuned to the cycles and when you're listening to your biology and when you're allowing yourself to go into that deepening state, you are then receptive to the gifts of the season, because every season, every cycle has so many gifts. It can be hard to go into a cycle that is going to demand greater introspection, where you don't have all the distractions of the summer and being outside, right, and the social aspects of it and the growth aspects where you're really beaming towards expansion and outwardness. This is a time when you start to go inward, and it can be hard to be with ourselves. It can be hard to listen to ourselves. And that is a lot of what comes up during this time.
Yeah, I love everything that you just said. And it brings us more deeply into what the real spiritual significance of the fall equinox is. And the fall equinox is the season of senescence. So this is a beautiful time to really go outside and start experiencing what nature is symbolizing and showing you. And one of the most beautiful ways to experience fall is by experiencing autumnal light. I have been obsessed with autumnal light for a couple decades now, because as a landscape designer, you're always looking at how light is interacting with plants. And to me, there's just this amazing beauty that happens. The quality of light shifts so much this time of year. And it's not bright, it's not overhead. It starts to become more diffused. There's a softening to the light. The light is showing us how to soften, how to release, how to start to become more introspective. And this time of year, in northern climates, is when all the ornamental grasses really start coming into their blooms. You know, the plumage. Normally it's just green blades all summer, and then so many of the ornamental grass species start displaying all of their seed heads. You know, they flower these seed heads, and the interaction of the sunlight with the grasses, the autumnal light is so different. If these grasses were blooming high peak light summer, they wouldn't be as magical. It would be more harsh light. And in the fall, all of a sudden, these beautiful stands of ornamental grasses are backlit by this light, and it like showcases the simplicity of their beauty, because they're not big, red, yellow, come get me, come pollinate me flowers. They are simple in their beauty. They're not showy, right? And yet the light is working with them to bring all of the elements of their simplicity, into the forefront. And it's just this beautiful time to be driving around country roads, to be looking at all the native wildflowers that are blooming this time of year. And like start paying attention, because the other thing that's amazing about fall is, as the light is shifting, as the temperatures are dropping, all of the plants are cued to that, right? So their production is slowing down. And what happens in fall is a timelessness where you can start to feel the stillness. And there's still growth, but the growth is starting to senesce. It's starting to slow down. And so it's such a different energy than spring. You can feel in the ground in spring, all the budding energy that's coming up. You can feel plants coming into action. You can feel this like birth of life, and it starts moving through you. But in the fall, nature is like, whoa, let's pause here. Let's take a deep breath. Let's let time become suspended as we are moving from this time of great productivity, of great harvest, into a time of introspection. And so it's this senescence and suspension where if you go outside in fall, you can really feel that slowing down. And it feels like time stops in fall, and it's giving you the cues to go internal, to feel appreciation for these moments of the green and the life and the harvest that is left. It's telling you, slow down. You've done the work. You've done the work. This is your time of harvest and appreciating in the stillness all that you've created. And you're going to take that down into Samhain, down into Yule, into introspection. And so there's another beautiful part of this is the leaves changing color. So when leaves change color, what's actually happening is they're stopping their food making process. So during the growing season, chlorophyll is constantly being produced and broken down. And what happens is that plants are cued by temperature and length of day and length of night. And so in the fall, as the temperatures start to drop and daylight hours get shorter, chlorophyll production slows down and then it stops. And so what happens then is that when the chlorophyll production stops, it allows the other pigments in the leaves to become visible. The reds, the yellows, the oranges. So these colors are always in the leaves year round. All of those beautiful, gorgeous fall colors are always present within the leaves, but the chlorophyll, the green of the chlorophyll, actually masks them in essence. So the carotenoids, these chemicals are there, but they're hidden by these large amounts of chlorophyll in the summer. And so like the beauty and the symbolism of that this is a time for allowing yourself to let all of these underlying colors within you, these different facets of you that have always been there, like they're being revealed as the overproduction of growth starts to subside. So noticing where you have been in a productivity cycle that makes you feel and look a certain way and put out a certain frequency into the world, all beautiful, all part of the seasons of our lives, the seasons of how we move through the year, how we move through our own cycles. But this is a way to realize that, as I let go of the go, the do, the green, all of these beautiful underlying colors are starting to present themselves in me.
Yeah, it's so true because we are, in our society, we've been really programmed to be solar. And we've been programmed to be solar throughout the year. And we're taught that our productivity is a measure of our worth and that the amount of output that we have is a measurement of our value. And what this really teaches us, and this is why it's so powerful to actually really drop into each cycle and really be attuned to it is that we are not just solar, we are also lunar, right? So this is a big part of the balancing of those energies as well that we have on that fall equinox day, is that, we have the balance of the outward with the inward, the solar with the lunar, the masculine with the feminine. We are, just doesn't matter what type of body you're in, like whether it is a masculine or a feminine or a non-binary one, you have masculine and feminine energies inside of you. And they are both important. They are both valuable. They both have lessons and gifts to instill. We've just been taught and trained that those feminine qualities are to be dismissed, are to be suppressed, are to be kind of pushed aside, right? Like the things that really honor the feminine, intuition and our success, sense, and our receptivity. So what's really powerful about this too is that, while we have these, we've just been through the cycles of outward action. Now we're moving into the cycles of receptivity, right? Like this is where we get to soften and show that side of us. How can we allow ourselves to really receive all that spirit and source and nature has for us during this time? This is a time of heightened intuition, because when we are in action and when the action oriented aspects of us are in the forefront, we're not always slowing down to really hear the deeper messages, right? Even if you're highly intuitive, there's a lot more noise in those external months. And we go into these quiet months where we're more subdued, where we are not around other people as frequently, and where there actually is a heightened lunar aspect, then we are really in this beautiful space to experience the gifts of like what we can channel from source, what we can receive from source. And in honoring those parts of us that are softer, that are more feminine, that are like so intuitive and sensitive, right? We get to really tune into that, and we get to heighten. If we are in this cyclical type of living, we get to showcase those parts of ourselves. And it may not be an outward showcasing, but it's an integration. It's an expression and integration of our wholeness, of our unity, and of the importance of that. Because when we are in our wholeness, right, honoring all of the aspects of ourselves, then we are actually much more attuned to our authenticity. And there's nothing inauthentic about the outward expression, about the outward months, but there's also beauty, right, in the authenticity of allowing for the quieter times and the quieter, more receptive aspects of ourselves, right? And so this is the part of the year, like we have, a lot of people don't love being cold, and they don't love staying inside more. Yeah, Ina definitely doesn't like being cold. But there is also, for a lot of people in our current society, a heightened fear around being alone, right? Around having to be quiet. And one of the real profound beauties of the season that we're entering as we go into, the Mabon cycle, Samhain, and Yule cycles, is that we do get to slow down. And if you can really get into the space of harmonizing that aspect of you so that you can be so present to yourself, so that you can know, oh, this is what wants to be healed. This is what needs to rest. We have to rest. We have to have cycles of rest, because the cortisol fueled summer months are not sustainable year round, right? So it's like really embracing the beauty of slowing down, and the beauty of that receptivity, and the beauty of your body guiding you to what is needed right now.
I love that so much. And that brings us into, how do we work with the spiritual meaning of the fall equinox, and what type of ritual work do we do during the fall equinox and the Mabon cycle? And as you're hearing all of this, we hope that you're getting this transmission that's causing you to start to reflect more inwardly and to notice these emotions that are coming up for you, the sadness, the loss, and the appreciation. Um, so this is a time ritually to go intentionally, walk in nature, connect with nature, and start looking for the seeds. All of these flowers, these grasses that are going to seed, starting to collect the fallen leaves, and be with the trees. Be with the plants, feel the gift and the messages that they're giving you as they are slowing down and as they are letting go. The power of leaves, of trees stopping their production, their chlorophyll production, and shifting colors and then releasing their leaves is such a gift of showing you that it's okay to let go. It's okay to let go. It's okay to embrace every stage of your beauty, every stage of your humanness, and allowing the trees and the plants, in ritual, in ceremony, to speak to you and to help you move through grief, to help you move through loss, and to help you feel that reciprocity of appreciation, where they're showing you that, yes, I'm dropping my leaves now, and yes, I'm going into the deep dormancy of winter, but come spring, all of that xylem and phloem will be running sap through me, and I will come alive again. And I am looking forward to the downtime, because that was a lot of production. I look forward to not having to be in production. I look forward to being in this inward space where then I get to be born again. I get to produce again. So any way that you can bring ritual into this process of grieving, of letting go, and of feeling the energy of that balance of polarities at this time, the masculine, the feminine, looking at the polarity of extroversion and introversion, output versus input, and action versus receiving. Like, these are all the different components that we're playing with, that you can bring into ritual.
I love that you just brought up rebirth, right? Because that's such a huge piece of this, is that, there is no life without death, and there's, no death without rebirth. And this was something that has been believed for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's only kind of recently that the idea of rebirth and resurrection was suppressed. So in Western cultures, or monotheistic cultures. So here we have, we are beginning the descent into the underworld. And the descent into the underworld, in traditions around the globe, there are underworld deities, goddesses and gods, who rule the underworld, because the underworld is what coincides with, the winter time, the fallow time. And it was the place of regeneration. It's where the souls went to rest and regenerate so that they could be reborn again. And so we have these mythologies from around the world that address this. And one that is well known is that from Greece, of Persephone and Demeter. And it was in the fall that Persephone, we're actually going to have a full episode on this coming up. Next episode will be on Demeter and Persephone, but this is when she begins her underworld descent. And so if you do work with the goddesses, Persephone and Demeter's grief at losing her daughter for 6 months out of the year is to work with that archetypal energy, to work with the energy of Persephone, who ultimately accepts this role of, okay, I go into the underworld, I've become queen of the dead. And she sort of embraces it, knowing too that she's going to come back above the earth in the spring. This is a powerful way to work with these energies, is to actually tap into archetypal energies of the season.
Yeah. And in that process of knowing that we're going into the underworld, this is also a time, one of the biggest rituals and celebrations this time of year is is expressing gratitude, right? Like the deep appreciation for the harvest that you have had, and for the ways in which nature is continually showing you how to balance yourself, how it's providing for you that balance, again, the equinox balance of giving and receiving. So this is a powerful time to give offerings back to Gaia and to keep this exchange in balance. The thank you for how you've nourished my body all season. Thank you for this bountiful harvest. And giving offerings, the offerings as you're walking through nature, as you're talking with plants, giving, you can give flower, tobacco offerings, flower offerings, and offerings of love, offerings of just speaking your love to the plants, offerings to the beings, to the elementals, to the gods, like speaking this appreciation to them, thank you, recognizing, letting them really know that you recognize the amount of systems of support that are here, physical and non-physical, that are nourishing you and keeping you alive and being in deep reverence.
Yeah. And it's also a great time to gather with your loved ones and celebrate. Have a potluck where everybody makes their, preferred seasonal dish and brings it over. And together you celebrate the flavors and the bounty and the joy of connecting with those you care about heart to heart, and really being in that place of gratitude for the capacity to have this bounty and to get together and share it with one another. And another option is that we have a fall equinox activation on September 22nd. And so on the fall equinox, which also initiates Libra season, which is the season of balance and harmony, right? Like no coincidence that those are together. We're going to be working with the balancing of energies, specifically this year as we move through an eclipse season, because things can be a little intense and chaotic during an eclipse season. And yet we have this beautiful moment of balance and harmony. And so a few of the things we're going to be working with in this activation are witnessing your projects blossom into their ripened fullness through focused and inspired energy, creating greater yield, more money, amplified overall abundance by balancing the energies of your inner masculine and feminine powers to maximize your personal autumnal harvest, and releasing emotional chaos and creating structured, harmonized balance as your pathway to success.
Yeah. These activations that we do are so potent and powerful, and it's hard for us to tell you what the results are going to be, because every person has their own experience in this. But we come together in this activated field that does, where you drop in and all of this healing work happens on you. And so this field really is that transmission of supporting you as we're working through these eclipse energies and helping you move through this fall season and the eclipse portal with more ease. Speaking of which, if you are feeling really intense energies with the eclipse season, you can always do our karmic sludge clearing to support you in having an easier time moving through the grief, the sadness, and all of the cosmic weather that's going on during this time.
Yes. Yeah. And then we also have a Mabon ritual handout for you that is going to be linked in the show notes, along with information about the activations, with a very specific ritual that you can use if you are new to ritual practice, or just if you enjoy trying different ritual practices. This is one that we know and love.
Yeah. So each week on this podcast, we share cyclical wisdom and practical tools and insights to support healers and intuitives to work with the seasons and archetypal energies as a process of awakening your gifts. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. You can also follow Kairos Healers Academy on Instagram or any other social media channel. Like and subscribe.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Kairos Wisdom Keepers, where healers walk outside of time.